Just bear with us for 1 second, everyone. We're still letting some people in. There are still people arriving, so just give us another 30 minutes. This is 30 seconds rather. This is going to be a popular session, so just give us one more minute while people are still arriving. We knew it was going to be popular, so this is great. Just give us 1 minute, and there's still people bouncing in. Whilst people are arriving, as you can probably see on the messages, we are recording this meeting. Your names and cameras will not be included in the recording, but we are recording this so we can share this afterwards.
Okay, we're mostly ready to go.
Brilliant. So, welcome, everyone. We're so delighted that Jeannie is here this evening and that all of you are here to join us for this fantastic book launch. I think it's been long awaited. People have been really excited to hear more about the book. It's brilliant to have you here, Jeannie. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself and the book and everything that you've been up to. Later on in the call, we will have time for Q&A. The lovely Kim Claydon will be facilitating those questions. If you have questions, please direct them to Kim in the chat. We also do have 5 copies of the book to give away. They are only for the people on this call. What we will do is to save time on the call and to keep everyone's names anonymous and to make it as smooth as possible this evening, we'll look at the attendance list after the call. We'll get 5 names drawn out of the hat and then we'll email you to let you know if you've been successful. But we do also have a 20% off voucher, only valid from the 2nd to the 9th of December, and that will be shared in the chat later on for everyone. But housekeeping aside, without further ado, it's brilliant to have you all here, and over to Jeannie. Jeannie, are you on mute?
Hang on. Hang on. I've almost found you. There you are. Ta-da!
Brilliant.
There we go. There we go. Hi. Oh, goodness me. I am so excited to see so many of you here. Wow, I'm just blown away by that. Thank you so, so much for being here. Huge thank you to the HMSA, of course, to Lisa, to Kim for hosting this event. Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. And as Lisa said, we've got 5 lovely copies of the book to give away today. So to 5 people who will be drawn out of a hat. But yeah, I can't wait to send those to you and share that with you. So what I thought I'd do is obviously explain a little bit about who I am, share a few slides with you, just a few. And then we're going to have just some open Q&A that Kim's going to facilitate for us. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. But I really want to talk to you about, what is, this is called the Integral Movement Method for Hypermobility Management. What is the Integral Movement Method if you don't know, and why? More importantly, what is it and why is it so important? Why did we need this book? And in my opinion, having worked with patients for 17 years and now being the proud founder of the Zebra Club, I truly believe, and being a patient myself, of course, we really needed this book. We really needed to change how we were being cared for and managed post-diagnosis. I'm not talking about diagnosis, and we know how those journeys can be very difficult and traumatic and all the things that go on. But I'm talking about after that, or if you haven't got a diagnosis, but you suspect that there are lots of things going on for you, we need to have a framework, a method, some guidelines. How should we be moving and exercising? And it's really hard to believe that today, in 2025, there are still no official guidelines for physiotherapy, and there are no official guidelines for exercise for people with hypermobility. And to me, that's absolutely crazy, right? It's just crazy that that does not exist, but it doesn't. So we go to physios, we go to exercise professionals, and people don't know what to do. And what they're trying to do is take a traditional exercise or physiotherapy method, or physical therapy if you're in the States, and apply that to an EDS or a HSD body. And it doesn't always work, right? Our bodies are very different in many ways. And so this book, I really hope, is going to contribute to that care and ongoing care for our community, and offer a framework that is actually researched and evidence-based. So it's not just my opinions, it's also now researched. So we know that it works, we know that it's effective. And I really hope that this book is going to offer that to patients, but also to practitioners. So that's kind of where we are with the book, but I'm going to share my slides, and that will explain a little bit more about where that came from, and what the IMM, the integral movement method, I call it the IMM, is all about. So let me share my slides. So I've only got a few, because I'd really like to get on to the questions from you guys. So hopefully you can see my slide there. So I'm just going to move my Zoom thing because it always gets in the way. So as I said, I am a movement therapist. Those of you who don't know me, I'm a movement therapist and a hypermobility specialist. I have been doing this for 17 years, but I am also a patient, and I have hEDS, POTS, and MCAS. So I'm an author, and I'm also an educator. So I do educate physiotherapists, physical therapists, Pilates, yoga teachers, massage therapists, anyone who's interested in body work. I educate, and I educate mainly through the EDS Society. I created the integral movement method for hypermobility, which is what we're here to talk about today. And I'm the founder of the Zebra Club, which those of you who don't know is a very, very special app for our community, a beautiful place for our members to be, to hang out, and we obviously look at movement, we look at mindfulness, we look at education, and we obviously have a big community. So that's me, and that's who I am, and hopefully my slides are going to move. There we go. So my mission really is to bridge science and lived experiences. So my lived experiences, your lived experiences. I've obviously met and worked with thousands and thousands of EDS and HSD patients over 17 years. So I've had a lot of lived experience, but also the science. This year I graduated with a MSc in pain management, and my MSc was focused on what causes pain-related disability in EDS and HSD patients. And I went back and looked at what is causing that. Is there a cause for that? Why do we end up with these chronic pain situations? So really bringing science and lived experience together so that we can start to feel safer, more confident, and hopefully move without fear. Because movement is really important for us. And, we're often told, this is part of the problem, is that we're often told, you've got EDS, you've got HSD, there's not much we can do for you, but go and exercise. You need to get stable, you need to get stronger. But because there are no official guidelines, we don't really know what to do. But we do know that it's really important, right? For a number of reasons. Safe movements actually give us physical and emotional well-being. And oftentimes in our community, that emotional side of living with this condition is often neglected. So people say, you need to get stable, you need to have stronger muscles, you need to be lifting weights or whatever it is. What about that emotional side? A lot of us have been through an awful lot to get to where we are today. And, you know, is anyone taking care of that as part of a movement package? Really small steps. Every step we take is progress. Okay. It doesn't matter if you're only doing one repetition of an exercise, that still counts. Okay. It's not about the intensity, because that's often a problem, isn't it? We say you need to do 3 sets of 10, 3 times a day of these exercises. And many of us can't do that. It's too much. It's just, we get fatigued, we get flare-ups, we can't do that. But if I can do 1 repetition consistently, then that is going to be really important. Okay, so as it says there, it's not about us having fitness perfection and having 6 packs and, you know, all of those things that go with the fitness industry. It's about functional resilience and actually daily vitality to be able to do our daily chores, to function on a daily basis. So the benefits, as I've talked about, you know, we know there are physical benefits. Some of these, you know, proprioception, we know that we lack proprioception. Joint stability, we obviously know that instability is a factor for our condition. Pain sensitivity and tension patterns. And by tension patterns, we'll talk a bit more about those, but I'm talking about, I call them habitual tension patterns. And you may have experienced this, where you hold yourself in a certain way because I'm either worried about moving, I'm scared of moving, I'm in pain, maybe I sublux my joints. So we kind of have these learnt behaviors where we hold ourselves and brace in a certain way. And that tension, obviously, over the years will have implications for how we breathe and how we move. Posture, balance, coordination, all really important things for everyday life. And then we mentioned these psychological benefits. You know, what can we get from appropriate movement? Definitely calming the nervous system. So for me, and we talk about this in the book, the most important thing to start with is nervous system regulation. Because if you've come up from a place, for example, where you're, oh, I'm really anxious and I've had bad exercise experiences and everything I've tried hasn't worked and I don't really know what to do. And then we jump straight in because someone told us you need to get strong and you need to be stable, and you start lifting weights or you start pulling on TheraBands. Your nervous system is like, what's going on? I'm not happy about this. Yeah. So we've got to get the nervous system on board. Yeah. That's going to rebuild our confidence and our self-efficacy. That is our belief in ourselves that we can actually do this. And obviously that independence, you know, that social connection, and having a community is so important. People who actually understand us. But why can movement feel unsafe? And I was talking earlier, you know, about why the book was so important, you know, that there aren't any official guidelines. So movement for us can feel unsafe. So we've talked about this. Patients are often told, just go exercise. You need to get stronger. Well, how? How do I do that? I don't know. We have pain, we have fatigue, we have instability, we have fear of movement. It can make movement intimidating. We often get conflicting advice. I don't know if this has happened to you. Maybe one person, one therapist says this to you, somebody else says something else to you. So the patients are confused, and then the clinicians are confused because there's no framework for the clinicians to follow. So everyone's kind of doing their best, but there was nothing really, do it this way and it works. There are no official guidelines. And sadly, many of us do stop exercising because we lose confidence, we get deconditioned, which obviously then makes it harder. And really importantly, people start to lose hope. And so many of my patients have said this to me, is that, you know, despite everything, what you gave me, Jeannie, is hope. And that's so important. If we can give someone a tiny little grain of hope that things can improve, then that's absolutely wonderful. So hope is that we shouldn't underestimate the power of hope. So there is research to back that up. We do know Dr. Russick, some of you may know Dr. Leslie Russick. She's a professor of physical therapy. She actually studied this, and she found that there were these 4 main reasons people gave up exercising: fear of movement or fear of pain, subluxation, having pain, having instability, so probably subluxing, dislocating, and importantly, being given inappropriate exercises. And again, you might relate to that. Maybe you were given things too soon. You weren't ready for it. It was too much. It was too intense. There was too many reps. It just wasn't right for you. It didn't meet you where you are. Okay. And there's another paper there from Jane Simmons. I'm sure many of you know Dr. Jane Simmons here in the UK. Patients, she did a study on patients, and they recognized the benefits of exercise, but far fewer patients believe that it helped to actually control their pain. So there is this sort of belief, oh, you know, is it really going to help? And I think that's where hope comes in. And so when I speak, obviously I've lived with this, so I'm a patient. And the first thing I did, and many of you know, my original training back in 2007 was in Pilates. So my background is a Pilates teacher, instructor, and I was doing Pilates. And there were so many things about Pilates that I loved, but there were also so many things that weren't so good for me, and they were making me feel worse. And I talk about this in the book. And so I started modifying it. I started changing it to suit my body. And I started to feel better. And then I started to try this with my patients, and they started to feel better. And it kind of evolved from there. So from my perspective, I was thinking there definitely needs to be a paradigm shift. What we're doing isn't working, or it's not working as good as it should be. Of course, you know, I'm not saying nothing works. Of course, there are things that work. But in general, through my work, I was hearing all the time that things weren't working. You know, people just didn't seem to understand EDS and HSD. So traditional rehab and exercise focuses on muscles and strength. So they want you to do reps, they want you to load the tissue, and they want intensity. Because a lot of the time, they want to work the tissue to the point of fatigue. But unfortunately, that doesn't work for us. So it's taking a non-EDS rehab model and applying it to EDS bodies. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, we begin with nervous system regulation. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. So for me, it was really important to build safety. And I mean, not just environmental safety, but emotional safety. Is my nervous system happy? Okay. So we've got this little table here. Instead of reps, we focus on regulation. Instead of strength first, we do safety first. Instead of standardized programs of here's a sheet of exercises, go and do them, it's adapted to hypermobility. And instead of pushing through the pain and fatigue model, we really go, hold on a minute, what do I need? What does my body need today? And that might be, I'm just going to lie on the floor and do some breathing exercises. And that's fabulous. Okay. So we work with you, not against your body. So here's a little visual, which is also in the book. Okay. So obviously it's called the Integral Movement Method. And there's a nice little visual that kind of explains how it all comes together. So at the top, you've got those five darker sort of little blocks, starting with unwind. Okay. And then underneath that, that's sort of your overarching philosophy. And then underneath that, you have 6 principles that are essential for hypermobility, movement, and exercise. So if we start at the top, unwind. Do you remember I was talking about, and in the book, yeah, each chapter goes into each one of those principles in great detail with research behind the reasoning behind each of those. Okay. So that's in all of that. And we also talk about obviously the top layer in detail as well. So do you remember at the beginning, I was saying that maybe we hold ourselves in a certain way because we're afraid or we're anxious or we're not breathing properly. Unwind. And I love this phase of it, because unwind is when we start to let go of some of that habitual tension. We actually become aware that we even had the habitual tension, because if you're like me and spent most of your life holding yourself like that, you didn't know that there was any other alternative. That's how I was. And so when I started to unwind, it was like, oh, wow, my shoulders have dropped. I can breathe. I feel better. So unwinding is really, really important. Then we start to explore movement, and it's really exploration. It's not rigidity. You must do it like this. No. What does it feel like when I lift an arm? What does it feel like when I move my leg? It's exploring, less stressful. Then we pause and assess, and we might have to refine it because old patterns aren't going to disappear immediately. Okay, so we refine and then we move on. And then importantly, at the end, we pause and reflect. Okay, did that feel different? What felt different? Asking questions to yourself, or, I always ask my patients questions. It makes us curious. And if we get curious, we're more likely to recognize changes. We're more likely to feel those changes. Because oftentimes we might finish a physiotherapy session or an exercise class. As soon as it's finished, we're out the door, we're back to our busy lives. And the class has kind of been forgotten because we didn't take that moment to just go, hey, did something shift? Did that feel easier this week? Oh, whatever it might be. And then underneath, we've got these 6 principles. And as I say in the book, there's accompanying text for all of those. And there's also exercises with photographs on all of those 6 principles. So you could basically work through the book and follow the rationale behind all of those and do the exercises as well. So breath and relaxation obviously go very much hand in hand with that unwinding part of the IMM. And, they're really important because, as I said, if we jump straight into strengthening work, stability work, and we haven't dealt with this nervous system regulation part, we might find that things don't go quite as we had expected. Okay, so we've known if you look back at any of the research papers, we've known for a long, long time that breathing pattern disorders existed in people with hypermobility, EDS, HSD. There's loads of research papers about, oh yes, they have problems with their breath. No one was doing anything about it. No one was saying, well, if they have problems with their breathing, or they're not breathing, or they're holding themselves in a certain way, how is that impacting their movement? Nobody kind of joined those dots. And I felt it was really important. Breath is such an integral part of movement. We had to join those dots. So breath and relaxation are super important. Proprioceptive exercises done very safely, really important because we know that people with hypermobility lack proprioceptive awareness. We lack body awareness. So we want to improve that before we even consider starting to work on stability. Yeah, and maybe giving some bands or some balls or whatever it might be to work on your stability. And then the last 2, very much, can you see how we're starting off very low, spending a lot of time supine, doing very, gentle things, getting increasingly more challenging. So stability might be something more challenging. Maybe we have to learn how to be on all 4s and organize our whole body, eventually coming up to a standing position. So balance, posture, can I walk? Walking is an act of balancing, right? I have to put one foot in front of the other. For a split second, I'm on one leg. Can I do that? Do I feel safe when I'm doing that? Do I have pain when I walk? All of those things, yeah, we want to resolve. We want to be able to walk. We want to be able to function. We want to be able to reach up into a cupboard and get something off a shelf. So balance, and also emotional balance. It's not just physical balance for me. You remember we talked about this emotional side of this condition. What's our emotional balance like? That's really important. And then eventually posture. Posture kind of emerges from all of the work you've done. Because if I'm breathing well, if my tissues are a little bit more supple, a bit more elastic, my posture is going to start changing. The way I hold myself is going to start changing. Posture is not something you can fix and stack your bones, because posture is dynamic. And every time you move, your posture is going to change. Okay, so I go into all of that in real detail in the book and explain how this is kind of a process from one end to the other. There is, as I said, we do know this is evidence-based now. So we have done research. Our first paper is now published, came out in March. The second paper is just finishing peer review, and that's a quantitative paper. So we'll have all the data about, how much did it change, what changed. But from our qualitative paper, we saw that the IMM provided physical and psychological well-being improvements. It increased confidence, people's pain was reduced, and their energy was increased. People said that they were happy because the program was hypermobility specific and paced for fatigue and pain. Because when we did the research and people had to complete the online course, well, two of the big factors, we knew pain was going to be a factor. Fatigue was also a factor. So any program needs to take into account that many of us do struggle with fatigue and energy. Empowerment was a big part of how people felt. And having an instructor who understands EDS and HSD was essential. So this is what people were feeding back in the qualitative work. But just reassuring that we now have, which is what the IMM is based on, obviously, evidence that a method exists now in the IMM that actually gives a framework for people to move safely. So practitioners can use it and patients can use it. Okay, and this is the first official sort of method that has been researched for us. So it's super, super encouraging. Just a little quote from a patient. This was in a blog, actually. I got a lot of blogs on my website if you want to go and sort of read up on different aspects of this condition. But it's a nice little quote. She was just saying, I was always hurt and exhausted, but I'd been hurt and exhausted my whole life. So I thought this was normal. Jeannie's method, which is the IMM, is different because she understands what my body feels like, and she explains things in a way that finally makes sense. So very nice to have that feedback. Yeah. And I think that's probably the last slide. Oh, just this emotional safety. Yeah. I don't want to underestimate the importance of emotional safety. As I say here, a threatened body cannot build strength because it's in protection mode. If we're living in fight or flight, which many of us do, and I did for a huge part of my life, it's very hard to get strong because I'm in fight or flight. Yeah, we need to dial that down. Okay. So just my closing thoughts. We want safe movement. Okay. We're bridging the science and the lived experiences. And my 3 S's that I want us all to remember: safety first, then stability, and then strength. We can't miss one of the S's, and we can't put the S's in different orders. Okay, safety, stability, and strength. And I think that is my last slide. Yes, it is. So I'm going to stop sharing. But I hope that gave you a little bit of information about how this book came about. What is the philosophy behind this book? So hopefully that answered maybe some of the questions, but hopefully we've got some questions that we can answer.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And I think that will have resonated with so many of us, if not all of us, on the call. And while you were talking, I was very conscious that I was actually sitting here tense, and I made the actual conscious effort to breathe and unwind. So yeah, it's I'm sure all of us found things in there that really hit home. But lots of questions, I'm sure, coming in. So I'm going to hand over to Kim to facilitate that. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first question, if you will, please. So just to be clear, guys, we can't do very specific medical advice here. We're doing general advice here and based on bendy movement stuff for Jeannie. But if you can give us any tips how to deal with trapped nerves in particular. This particular person says they have these on and off and some just seem to carry on for years. Thank you. If you've got any tips around trapped nerves.
Oh gosh. Well, hopefully we've seen a physio or a physical therapist or somebody in that capacity just to assess you. If you were my patient, obviously I'd want to be looking, you say they've been there for years. I'd want to be looking at, where's that coming from? Why are we getting these compressions? Why are we getting that? Is it the way I hold myself? Is it the way I walk? Is it the way, could be anything, right? And obviously I don't know where the pinched nerves are. So I'd really be looking at you as a whole person and trying to understand where those compensatory patterns might be coming from, that we're then compressing certain areas, which may then be pinching the nerves. So I don't have a sort of it would, come down to movement. Once I've looked at you and assessed how you hold yourself, how you move, if we could then start getting some unwinding done, because are we holding ourselves in a certain way, which is then pinching the nerves? We don't know, but could we unwind some of that tension, then get some appropriate movement going? Could we start to relieve some of that?
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, we've got hi Kim, or hi Jeannie in this case, because they're messaging me. My question is, how does the book tie in with the app? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very good question. So the app, as I mentioned, is the Zebra Club app. And the Zebra Club, obviously, a huge part of the Zebra Club app is movement. So those are classes taught by me in various categories, like sleep, fatigue, pain management, stability and strength. We do obviously have stability and strength on the app. We also have challenging classes on the app. We have cardio classes on the app, but we guide you through the app so that you don't go in, jump straight in and start doing strength and lifting weights and things like that. So we guide you. So everything that is in the app that I teach is following the IMM. Okay, so every class pretty much starts with some unwinding. Breath is a huge part of it. We have a whole host of meditations on there, of which Kim has 2 lovely sleep meditations that she's done for us and are hugely popular on our app. So thank you, Kim. But we have hypermobility specific audio meditations to work on that unwinding, releasing that tension. And then, we really guide you through those principles. So the sleep and fatigue, the mindful and stress sections are really dealing with breath, relaxation, bringing in some proprioception. Then we have proprioceptive classes, stability classes. And then obviously we move you up into more balancing, a lot of standing work, walking, foot classes, balancing classes. So it's very much a structured thing. So we have categories, but we also have programs, which again follow the IMM. So if you said, well, I've got a really bad knee, my main problem is my knee. Say you said, we have a program for your knee joint. So you could just follow that. And again, it would follow the same structure. We wouldn't jump in and have you doing single leg squats on the first lesson, right? We would get you unwinding your tension, starting to work on your knee, but it would be very progressive. And that's part of the issue, right? So many people come and see me and they go, oh, I've got a hip problem, or I've got a knee problem, and my physio has me doing single leg squats. Or, and I'm just, it's like, why are we starting with single leg squats? Those are really hard. Or is it just me? I find single leg squats and things like that really challenging. And why are we starting people off on things like that? Do they even know how their hip joint moves? Do they know where their pelvis should be and how the hip joint rolls into the pelvis? Can they move without stress and pain? We don't want to jump straight into doing the balance and the challenging stuff. So we basically guide you through that following the IMM principles on the app.
Fabulous, thank you. The next question from the same person, if I may, they're just questioning if you've got any thoughts around graded return to cardio with a recumbent bike. Should this only be done when stronger and less subluxations, because their cardiologist recommended graded cardio, but they're pretty housebound at this point, so they want to know if it's worth investing in a bike.
Well, recumbent bikes are great. But I totally understand your concerns, right? And this is the thing, right? That the doctors will say, go and do this, you need to do this, because they're dealing with one aspect of your condition, right? And then we've got all the other aspects like subluxations or pain that maybe that cardiologist isn't thinking about. So obviously, very much down to the individual. There's nothing wrong with doing things in tandem. And say you got a bike or you got a piece of equipment, say, I don't know, or an upright bike or something else. There's nothing wrong with, saying, okay, I've got this bike and the cardiologist said I need to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to start with 2 minutes on the bike and I'm going to take it really slow. Before I get on the bike, I might do a bit of unwinding. I might do one of those meditations. I might breathe a little bit. I might settle into the seat of the bike. So I'm in a relaxed position before I try and pedal for 2 minutes. There's nothing wrong with, one of the things we talk about in the Zebra Club is go low, go slow. There's nothing wrong with starting with 1 or 2 minutes and then building up very slowly from there. Remember, what we want doesn't matter what you're doing, swimming, biking, treadmill, whatever. The curve is going to be like this. It's not even a curve, right? It's going to be so gentle on the gradient because the mistake we often make, obviously, is we go up and then we come down and we go up and then we come down. There's nothing wrong with slow, 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 slow. It's the consistency rather than the intensity. So if you decide to get a bike, great, but start off really low and slow and build up. And then do other things as well to help with the subluxations and the pain and all the other things. So perfectly okay to do things together. Yeah. And actually, our bodies love variety. It doesn't want to do the same thing every day. Have you ever had that sort of repetitive strain injury where you've done something, even things like knitting and stuff like that, and then you're like, oh, my wrists, because we hate repetitive movements. So the more variety, the better.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is, do you have any tips for exercises for the wrists that are hypermobile, as they've been on crutches for a couple of years now for different issues, but their wrists are particularly hypermobile? Thank you.
Yes. So I do have a couple of videos on YouTube, actually. Those of you who don't know, I also have a YouTube channel called the Hypermobility channel, has over 300 and something videos on it. So there's definitely some wrist videos on there that you could look up. But yeah, again, with the wrists, we'd want to be looking at the whole structure as well. So how you move, obviously, because your wrist is part of this, which is part of your upper arm, which is part of them feeding into your torso. So how do I use all of my arm? Is all that load going through this one joint? Yeah, if we've got very bendy wrists like me, yeah. Am I loading this too much? Am I distributing? Remember, a lot of movement is about how we're distributing forces through the body. That's basically what it is, right? How am I distributing force? Now, if you're hypermobile and some things move more than other things, how many of us, if we could see a show of hands, are stiff in some places and very flexible in others, right? It's very common, right? My hips are so stiff, and yet pretty much everything else is like, oh, I'll do whatever I want. It's very, very common. So if I'm very loose in some areas and very stiff in other areas, and I'm walking along or I'm doing something, the same amount of force has still got to come through my body, right? The force doesn't change, yeah? So the body will always take the path of least resistance. So if I'm very stiff up here, maybe I hold my shoulder and my elbow in a certain way, the force has got to go somewhere. So is that force going to the most mobile joint in the body, which is the wrist? Yeah, I'm sorry, that is not correct. The wrist is not the most mobile joint in the body. I meant in this particular case, maybe my wrist is really mobile and the other bits are stiff, right? So we want to look at how you're using the whole arm into the torso. And then we can do very, very specific exercises and easy, simple exercises to start working on stability, okay? I've got a really nice one on the Zebra Club, super simple. And you grab a tennis ball, which isn't too heavy, right? So it's nice and light. And you just make sure you've obviously got all of this sorted out first. So you wouldn't want to do it with your shoulder up here and kind of be like this. So you need to do a bit of unwinding. And then let me just drop my camera a bit. You put the tennis ball here. And obviously, if you're holding the tennis ball, you can't do this and let it fall off. So you're going to have to do a little bit of stability here, aren't you, to hold the tennis ball. So even just holding this and breathing is an exercise, because this guy is doing some isometric holding. But what we then get people to do is try and move from the right place, the arm around, without dropping the tennis ball. So a very simple way, which isn't too stressful on the joint, to start building up a bit of stability in the wrist, okay? So it's kind of two things. How am I using my whole arm so that I'm not overstressing the joint? And then how do I start to build a bit of stability in that joint? And obviously you can wear compression. I don't wear them, but obviously there are lots of sort of splints and things that you can also wear to help build that awareness of the alignment of the joint. Yeah. Sorry, that was a very long answer. Sorry.
Hey, I'm not going to mind. It's fine. Thank you. Okay, so next question is, please. I live in the US and haven't been able to get a diagnosis, but believe I have mild hypermobility. I'm 49 and have been working at a computer for 20 years. Sitting at my desk causes me significant pain in my back, neck, and shoulders, despite having an uplift desk and expensive ergonomic chair. What can I do to reduce pain associated with work? I don't know where to begin. Thank you.
Oh, and you're certainly not alone, I'm sure. Because there's so many, we could do a whole lesson on that. I think we've actually got a class in the Zebra Club called Work and Travel Stress, actually. But you're certainly not alone, because if we're hypermobile and I've been sitting at my desk, first, how do I sit at my desk? So am I collapsing? We often get the forward head posture, and then maybe I'm on my computer like this. And if I've been doing it a long time, and maybe I've got a full-time job, and maybe I have to sit there for 8 hours or something a day, all of that is going to start building up, right? Repetitive movements. Remember I said earlier, we hate repetitive movements. So if I'm sitting here like this all week, every week, it's going to start taking its toll. But that's life, right? If that's my job and that's what I need to do, then I have to do that. But what can I do to help that? So basically, we have to add into our lives compensatory patterns to compensate for all the sitting that we're doing. So you're sitting, the spine doesn't move. Maybe I'm not breathing properly because I'm like this. Yeah, maybe my hips are getting stiff because I'm sitting and my hip flexors are getting shortened. Yeah, maybe my glutes are getting a little bit weaker because I'm sitting on them all day and I'm compressing them. So there's all these different things. Maybe my shoulders are like this and my arm bones are rolled forward because I'm on my computer a lot. So many different things could be going on, right? So we'd have to do a thorough assessment. But apart from that, we just need to start moving, really, and they can be movement snacks. So a lot of people who work find movement snacks are really, really helpful, because if I work 8 hours in an office, I'm tired by the time I get home, especially if I have to drive. Am I really going to then get on my mat and start doing a whole class? Maybe not. But how about during the day, we add in movement snacks for you? So I could sit at my desk and do some little pelvic tilts. Remember, my body doesn't like being fixed and it doesn't like repetition. So if I'm sitting like this all day, I'm going to move my spine with some little pelvic tilts. Maybe I can do a little side bend in my chair. No one will notice in the office. Maybe I can roll my shoulders to get rid of some of that tension. Whatever it is, definitely get up, maybe do some heel raises, get the blood pumping up the legs. So while you're making a coffee in the office at work, you can be walking on the spot. You could be doing some arm circles, whatever it is. You've got to think, okay, what do I spend most of my day doing? I'm like this. So what could I do to compensate that? What does my body need to change that? I probably need to open my chest and do some nice arm movements. Maybe I need to flex and extend my spine, whatever it is that works for you. But you can pop these little 2-minute movement snacks in throughout the day, and that will stop that massive buildup of compression from sitting at a desk all day.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, next question. If we are neurodivergent and have severe anxiety disorders that are proven to be treatment resistant, and therefore our nervous system is rarely or never regulated or calm, will the IMN still work for us?
I'm going to say yes, because in the Zebra Club app, we have a whole community and even a we have subgroups of different community. We have a whole community of neurodivergent people on the app. And I think we estimated, actually, and these are not official, but we're just kind of guesstimating, maybe up to 50% of our members would consider themselves falling into that category. So they're there, they're using the app, they're benefiting from the app. So I'm going to say yes, it absolutely can help. There are certain things we might do differently. Some people find it very hard to just sit and focus on the breath. So we would get you maybe moving, some very gentle micro movements as well. There are different things we can do, but that's where the community is so helpful, because you can go on the community and say, hey, I've just joined, I'm neurodivergent, what do you recommend I do to get started? And of course, you've got a whole host of other people who are in the same position, and they'll say, hey, I started with this and I found this was helpful because of XYZ. So yes, definitely, because we have the proof that people are using it and they're benefiting from it.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is the NHS physio pre-diagnosis, but after, now excuse my pronunciation of this one, cauda equina, that bundle of nerves at the lower back, was way too much too soon. And they really wouldn't listen to them, and they wouldn't hear anything that they were saying about how they suspected they were hypermobile. They were even crying during the sessions, been there, scared, not wanting to do the exercises they were making them do. It was no use to them. They couldn't repeat it at home either. So really hope for the information you're telling them or telling us here right now will make their way down to everyone at some point. And they wish they had this knowledge then, as it's left them scared to exercise and they're getting weaker.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm sure, as Kim said, you're not alone in having these experiences. And we saw the research from Dr. Russick, right? It's one of the main reasons people give up exercises, because they're given inappropriate exercises. So I'm really sorry that happened to you. I mean, on a positive note in that regard, as I say, I do educate and I do work with the NHS. I've worked with 3, and again, sadly, it's not, I don't want to say global, but it's not countrywide at the moment, but I have worked and I'm still working with one of the NHS trusts. So I've worked with 3 NHS trusts, and I've trained the physiotherapists and the pain specialists in those NHS trusts on the IMM. Okay, so there is hope, because there are some trusts who are willing and open to listen to it. They recognize that their hypermobile patients do need to be treated differently. So there are people out there who are saying, hey, we're seeing a lot of hypermobile people. We don't really know how to deal with them. Can you help us? So that is some hope, hopefully, for us. And I do, as I say, work with the EDS Society and Polestar Pilates in training therapists, so physiotherapists, physical therapists, anyone, as I said, who is interested in body work. Because yes, this is a real issue, isn't it? That people don't listen to us. Sometimes, not everyone, of course, there are some really good therapists out there, but we have these experiences that people don't listen, they give us the wrong things, and then we're the ones who are made to feel bad because we couldn't do the exercises. Well, it doesn't work like that. those were not the right exercises for me. So do better. You need to do better. I'm not the problem. I'm the patient. You need to give me the right information. So a little bit of hope that I am trying to filter this out and disseminate it into the wider world. So, but obviously it takes time. It does take time. So, but I'm really sorry that that happened to you, and you have all my sympathy, because I imagine how awful that must have been.
Thank you. Are there any particular differences or additional considerations with your program when working with children and young people, please, Jeannie?
Yes. So I've worked with children in my clinic, and I do know that on the Zebra Club app, a lot of parents do the app with their children. So I do know that that happens. With children, the thing is we've got to try and make it fun, depending on how old they are, of course, but the younger ones, they need to have fun. So we need to make it interactive and engaging for them, because, you know, I've worked with little ones like 7, 8 years old. It's a little bit more challenging to get them to lie still on a mat and just breathe. So what can we do for the little ones to make it more fun? And, you know, we use toys like the balls, the small Pilates balls, or the tennis ball, or whatever it is, to engage with them. So yeah. But as I say, a lot of parents do go on the app. And I think what the children like is that the parents do the classes with the children, because it's, you know, it's one-on-one time, isn't it, with mum or dad, and it's really nice, and then they have fun together. So I think that works quite well. And a lot of the classes, you know, in the app use like the little Pilates ball, or a TheraBand, or, you know, simple things that you can have at home. So yeah, we do try and make it a little bit more fun for them. But, you know, I'll just be honest, there are no specific children classes on the app at the moment, but they are doable with an adult, if that makes sense.
It does indeed. Thank you. Okay, bear with me on this one. So I started reading the book voraciously, and they are struck by Jeannie's openness and so grateful she wrote this as a result of your lived experience. They particularly connected with the pain side of things, having developed CRPS after TPF surgery. This particular person is just qualified as a Pilates teacher to help others like them who love exercise, but the hardware isn't playing ball. As part of a patient feeling safe and cared for, their question is around language and how it matters. How we guide our physios, consultants to create psychological safety be clear when their language is unhelpful. So, for example, they had a physio ask them how their mental health was. They said trash, and later in the session, she carried out a dynamic postural analysis. She called my walk-in trash and laughed. I didn't even mind that, but there was no subsequent specifically or willingness to elaborate. So how do we create boundaries and share the impact without impacting the relationship too much? Which is a really good question.
That is a really good question, and so important. So thank you for raising that, and congratulations on qualifying as a Pilates teacher. So yeah, we need more people on the ground. So fabulous. Language is so important, right? And yeah, it infuriates me when you hear things like that, and the way that doctors often talk to patients and diminish things, or they throw these sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, these very sort of, very relaxed for them comments, like, oh, yeah, there's nothing you can do. You know, I've heard people being told you'll probably end up in a wheelchair. So, you know, what, I mean, how is that helpful? It's not true, you know, but how is that ever going to help somebody, what we were talking about, feel safe, have self-efficacy, have confidence, have less fear? How is that going to help? You know, so as a therapist, and if there are therapists here as well, we have a huge responsibility in how we communicate to the patients. That's down to us. So, saying things like that to a patient, in my opinion, is not acceptable at all, not helpful at all. Every word that comes out of our mouth has to help somebody in some way. And language and the words we choose are extremely important. And, for me, I kind of take language very much into my teaching, in that when I teach, and if you've ever watched any of my videos, or even if you read the book, you won't find words like squeeze or push or pull or brace, all of those words that have sort of connotations of force, that are kind of taking us back to that negative sort of fight or flight. Oh, I'm going to squeeze my abs, I'm going to pull my shoulders down my back, and I'm just going to, you won't find any of that language from me, because words like that just increase our tension and stress in our tissues. And my job, for me as a movement therapist, is to help you remove the stress and tension that you've held from probably most of your life, and help you find a different way. There's a different way to move. There's a different way to breathe, to exist every day, that doesn't have to involve language that is frankly quite stressful. And the way we communicate to our patients, whether it's how we teach them as therapists or delivering information like that, can be done in a much more effective way than the case that you shared there. So I'm really sorry that happened to you.
There's a time and a place for sharing the language as well, isn't there? Just because they've said the word trash doesn't mean you use it in a different context.
No, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So sometimes I'm lost for words because I hear such awful things that I just think, just think every word that comes out of our mouths, is that going to help someone?
I think they forget that their words hold power. That's the
absolutely, because people remember that. It's like when you've got the spine of you tell a young person, oh, you've got the spine of a 70-year-old. I mean, how, if you were a young woman or man and you were told you've got the spine of a 70-year-old, I'm surprised you're still standing. How is that going to make you feel about moving, about getting stronger? Because, we're often in a vulnerable situation, and these people are powerful to us, right? We go to them because we hopefully, we're looking for trust, we're looking for reassurance, and it's just not helpful, is it, saying to somebody something like that? But that's what the patient will remember. Oh, I have the spine of a 70-year-old. It's not great.
Oh no. Thank you. We have lots of questions still. We'll rattle through a few more if we can, but I might have to mop them up for you. And possibly if we can maybe ask you to come back and do something for us, or maybe we can get you to answer questions. Thank you. Now this person's asking, I guess, for your personal opinion on what do you think of manual manipulations?
Do they mean like manual adjustments? Like, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Like if you go to a physio or a chiropractor or something and they manually.
I think so.
Well, that's a hard one to say because it depends, what kind of manual adjustments we're talking about. Obviously a lot of physiotherapists, I personally, as a movement therapist, I don't do any kind of manual adjustments. So I don't have any personal experience of doing it. So I'm very much looking at movement patterns and tactile cues to help people move better, but I don't actually get involved in the sort of the adjustments in that way. So that would be where I would refer to a physiotherapy colleague for that kind of thing. But it really depends, doesn't it, how they're done. I mean, obviously, we don't recommend any kind of manual high velocity adjustments to anyone's neck. That is a big no-no. Especially if you're suffering with a CCI or something like that. But in general, I don't think high velocity adjustments are probably the best thing for us. So yeah, I mean, I don't really, I think sometimes they're necessary, right? And some people get a lot of benefit out of it, and having people get joints back in place and helping that way. But yeah, I really think it depends on how it's done, and if you really trust that person. I think you have to have a good relationship. You need to definitely have somebody who is listening to you and saying, "Oh, I'm hypermobile. Please don't go too strongly on me, because it could make me feel a bit sore tomorrow." But yeah, there are certain things we say definitely no, but I've had manual adjustments before, and sometimes I think they're necessary.
Thank you. Are you okay to do a couple more questions, and then
Yeah,
we'll
sure.
mop up the few.
Yeah.
Okay. So this particular person is asking, would you say Pilates is a good choice for someone with EDS? It's all their GP keeps recommending, but then they subsequently messaged and said, I wish I could have recommended this to my current NHS physio, as recovery from surgery and my physio didn't know about EDS and had to Google it in front of them. But I will say, well done them for Googling it at least.
Exactly. So were there two questions there, Kim? Well, I heard the
So
first one is Pilates good.
yeah,
Was
they
the
just wanted to
second?
kind of add about they wish they'd
Ah,
known about the IMM
ah,
and for
yes,
their current physio for
yes,
after surgery recovery. But the
yeah,
main question is, would you recommend Pilates as it is a good
yeah.
choice for EDS because that's all their GP is recommending for them?
Yeah, and Pilates is often recommended as a form of exercise by doctors and GPs and things, because it is, it is relatively low impact, isn't it? You can either do it on a mat or you can do it on one of these machines. Um, so the problem with Pilates is that not all Pilates is created equally, as like in most things, not all yoga is created equally. So as I was saying for myself, I was obviously loving lots of things about Pilates, but there were also lots of things that just didn't suit me and were making me feel worse. You can get so many different types of Pilates now. There's, you know, you've even got hip Pilates, you've got, cardio Pilates on a machine. I mean, there's so many different things. I think you have to choose carefully. If possible, have a one-to-one with somebody, especially if you're new, and check that person, if they don't know about EDS or HSD, are they willing to learn about it? Like you say, Google it, even if they have to Google it while you're there. So interview your potential teacher. Do you know what this is? This is what I have. I won't be able to do maybe some of the things you're asking me to do in class. Is that okay? Okay. So, but ideally try and have at least one session if you can afford it with somebody. And then if you're going to join a class, try and join a small class. Some classes, they have 20 people in them. Some classes have 20 reformers in them. I wouldn't be recommending one of those. So you want small classes, but most importantly, you want the teacher to understand and be able to modify for you, and you to feel comfortable that it's okay that maybe you're not going to do what everyone else is doing in the class. Okay, because Pilates can be you do it this way, and if you're not doing it this way, it's not Pilates. Well, that's fine by me. I've modified it so much. It doesn't look like the classical repertoire that Mr. Joseph Pilates was doing. And that's okay. For me, I always say to me, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, as long as it doesn't hurt and it's making you feel better. Who cares what it looks like, right? So yeah, but definitely interview your potential teacher if you're thinking of joining Pilates.
That's a very good
Oh,
suggestion. Interview
and
them.
can I just add, on my website, I have an IMM directory of all the people so far that I have trained through, at the moment, the EDS Society. There are a lot of Pilates teachers on that directory. So if you chose someone from the IMM directory, you would know that they have been trained in this method. So it's a huge tick that they have some pretty comprehensive training behind them. And so that would be where I'd start. So I'd go there on my website, IMM directory.
Thank you. How does this book differ from your previous book? Thank you.
Yes, so I have, well, I got two other books. So one was in, gosh, such a long time ago, 2016, Pilates Without Tears, okay, which doesn't mention hypermobility, but it introduces the IMM for the first time. The second book, which was 2019, I think, Hypermobility Without Tears. So a follow-on from the first book, but it's obviously talks about hypermobility. This third book is more detailed in a sense. It's got, first of all, we've got two guest authors, which I should mention. So the first chapter is written by Dr. Alan Hakim, who some of you will, in the UK will definitely know. He's a very renowned rheumatologist here in the UK. He's also the Director of Education at the hEDS Society. So he writes the first chapter, a very detailed chapter about what is a connective tissue disorder. Okay, and my second chapter by Dr. Leslie Russick, who's the professor of physical therapy, is all about pain mechanisms in EDS and HSD. So what kind of pain do we experience? Why is it different? And she has some really unique diagrams in there to explain these pretty complex topics. So she's kind of given us permission to use her diagrams, and they're really nice, like with buckets. I think, Kim, you talk about buckets, don't you? Buckets overloading. Yes. And yeah, so Dr. Russick has got something very similar related to pain. And then the remaining chapters are written by myself. As I said, we go through those different principles in detail, and then a final chapter on integration, how we kind of bring it all together. So this one is a little bit more detailed because we've got the guest authors, but it also, I draw on a lot of more research. So in the first two books, there wasn't really any clinical research mentioned. It was quite an easy read for the patients. They both have exercises in them, but this one is sort of practitioner and patient sort of appropriate. This one has also been endorsed by lots and lots of doctors around the world that you guys would probably have heard of. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So there's some beautiful, including lovely Dr. Philip Bull, who is a big friend of the HMSA.
Yeah.
So he wrote a lovely testimonial, always wonderful to hear from Dr. Bull. So yeah, slightly different in slightly more, I guess you could say slightly more technical, but it doesn't make it a difficult read either. So don't let that put you off. Okay, it's it just kind of gives you the whole package, really.
That sounds like the perfect place to end, actually. That was a perfect final question, in a sense. Kim, I reckon we've got loads more questions.
I've got loads.
Probably never, ever going to make our way through all of them. So, Jeannie, we would absolutely love to have you back. But before that, thank you so much. I'd just like to tell everyone again that the discount code is in the chat with the link. Please remember the discount code. It's a magic code. It runs out in a week's time. Also, if you can fill in the feedback form in the chat, we would be massively grateful. It literally takes you about 20 seconds, but it's super helpful for us. And it'd be lovely to give Jeannie some feedback as well. And I think just massive thanks to Jeannie for coming this evening, for telling us more about her book, and for all the amazing work that you're doing to support the community. So I'm sure this evening there were so many things that all of us went, I relate to that, I understand that, I've been in that position. So thank you so much for all you're doing and all the really positive work to move things forward. So thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
You.
Bye, everyone.